Mr.
Bond. James Bond. You carry a 00 number. It means you're licensed to kill, not get killed.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 1962 classic James Bond film, the one that started them all, Dr. No. The film is directed by Terence Young and it stars Sean Connery, Ursula Andress, Bernard Lee, Joseph Wiseman and Jack Lord. Right, okay. I'll give you a brief rundown of the film. And essentially, Bond is sent to Jamaica to investigate the disappearance of some agents. When he gets there, he uncovers a dastardly plan by Dr. No, who intends to do his usual thing, as villains always do, and, world domination and all that. And it's up to Bond to put a stop to all this nonsense. Right. What are my thoughts on Dr. No? Well, I put a poll up recently asking you guys which film franchise you wanted me to focus on next. I put up a few options, and James Bond franchise was the runaway winner. So thanks for that, guys. That's one hell of a commitment from me. And I am going to review every single James Bond film from the beginning, all the way through. Now, when I get up to Daniel Craig, which granted will take me a while, I've already reviewed the majority of Daniel Craig's. I think there's a couple that I haven't. But that's way down the line. This is going to take me quite a while to obviously do these, but at the same time I put the James Bond films on that list knowing it was a commitment, and half of me half hoped that you guys would pick James Bond because I really wanted to revisit the James Bond films. I grew up obviously in the UK. James Bond is, well, it's a part of our fabric in this country now. And it's a big part of my generation's childhood. I remember growing up watching James Bond films on bank holidays, on the TV, loving them, absolutely loving them. And granted, I have seen all the James Bond films in some form or another, or at some point or another. But, I've never watched them in sequence, in the right sequence. I've just caught them when I could on TV and stuff. I've never even owned a James Bond box set, I don't believe, in my time. So this is going to be pretty cool for me. I'm going to revisit all of them, and I'm going to review them as I would any other film, as a film. Not going to trying not to get nostalgia get in the way. I'm going to try and not look through these films through rose-tinted glasses or anything like that. Regardless of how old they are and, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to try and be honest about them. So with all that being said, this is, as I said, this is the one that started them all, Dr. No. And I think it's fair to say, while there are some clearly iconic moments in this film, it's a bit of a damp squid. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all. What I mean is, it is the first one, it's kind of struggling to find its feet a little bit, and it takes an age to get going. Well over an hour before anything of real note happens of interest. It's very, very slow paced. And like I say, Bond is usually like jet setting all over the world. Well, this one is just set in Jamaica. A couple of highlights throughout that kind of first hour, but until he really gets to like the island where Dr. No is, it's a bit of a slog, honestly. But there are some highlights that, are clearly I'm going to talk about, and what I mean by that is there's right at the beginning our introduction to Bond. It's that iconic scene with him at the poker table, James Bond thing, and just the look that Sean Connery gives. I mean, God almighty, it's cool. It's really, really cool. And even though it's the first time he played Bond, from the moment you see him, he is James Bond. Which is ironic, really, because Ian Fleming didn't want him as James Bond. He wasn't keen at all. He thought the actor playing James Bond should kind of come from a bit of upper class sort of thing. And that is absolutely not Sean Connery. He came from, like the lower classes in Scotland and stuff. But he changed his tune and he realised that Connery was actually perfectly cast eventually. They wanted people like initially Richard Burton and Cary Grant. Richard Burton couldn't do it or turned it down, and I think Cary Grant said he'd do it if they cut down on the violence. And obviously they weren't going to do that. Not that it was overly violent anyway, this one. But that saved us, really, because could you imagine anybody but Sean Connery doing this? Of course we couldn't. So you get the iconic moments from Bond where he introduces himself. You get him that ice cold kill he does with that guy. The guy comes in his room and he shoots what he thinks is Bond in his bed, and he's waiting for him in his chair. He says, "That's a Smith and Wesson, and you've had your 6," and then just shoots him in cold blood. I mean, it's really cool. Obviously, the iconic scene of Ursula Andress coming out of the sea. I mean, it's perfect. And when she says to Connery, "Are you looking for seashells too?" and he basically says, "I'm just looking." Brilliant. Some aspects of the film clearly haven't aged well. There is a couple of actors here that are kind of gone through makeup to make them look oriental, and Joseph Wiseman's one of them, the guy who played Dr. No. They kind of get away with it, I suppose, because he plays Dr. No so well, and he's pretty sinister. And there's some racial stereotypes here on display here that are a little bit uncomfortable, where he says to the guy from the fishing boat who's helping him, "Fetch my shoes," and you kind of curl up and die a little bit inside. But you got to remember, this is 1962. We can't batter films that are kind of of their time, if you like. We get the iconic Bond theme here, an early version of it that doesn't really come into its own until I think it's the next one, From Russia with Love, because I think John Barry takes over the theme and stuff like that. But overall, this is a solid start for Bond. If I'm being honest, I think the score I've given it is fair for the film it is. It's not aged brilliantly. There's some issues with the pacing, massive issues with the pacing, but there are also some moments where it just oozes class and coolness and complete Bond moments that are unforgettable. So a solid start for Bond. It's From Russia with Love next, I believe, so I shall be checking that one out and giving you a review for that as soon as I've rewatched it. So let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on this film. What's your favourite Bond film? Who's your favourite James Bond actor? We can get into all that in the comments, because we're going to be at this for a while, guys, reviewing the James Bond films. So, I'm looking forward to reviewing them for you guys and checking out all your comments and interacting with you. So, thanks for joining me for this review.